Hello everyone, and this is lesson 2 in making explosions in Houdini. So in this lesson, we're going to take a look at how to make something like this. Okay, so primarily what we are going to look at are a few new nodes that are available in Houdini 18. So they're called the Pyro Burst and the Pyro Trail. Okay, so those help sort of generate the explosion shapes a lot faster. So if you look at this explosion, you actually have like three things going on here. So you have like the central explosion, and then you have these trails, okay, and you have the shock wave on the ground. So we're going to take a look at, how to create all three of these. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll come to a new file, and what I have here is I have a light, okay, and I have like an empty geometry. So what you want to do is you want to start off with like creating a point source. You don't need to, like if it's just a single explosion, you don't need to create this. But if it's multiple, then it helps. Okay, even though we're not doing multiple explosions today, okay, not in this lesson, we'll do it next time. Okay, so what you want to do is just take an add node and create like a single point. And this point will become our explosion source. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to start with like a pyro burst source. And the pyro burst source is like a digital asset which creates, like a basic explosion shape. So this is what it makes. What's happening is I think it's creating like a bunch of points and like trails behind them, which expand over time. And then it uses these to generate all the various attributes that you need for explosion. So if you click on the eye, you'll see that it generates the burn and the temperature and also like P scale and other things. And it also generates the velocity. Okay, so your explosion will sort of, go out in that direction. Okay, parameters wise, it's not, it's nothing complicated. You have like an initial size, like if you want it bigger or smaller. You have a spread angle. Okay, so how much the explosion should spread. Okay, if you go like full 180, this is good for like aerial explosions. You have roundness, so how much it should be, rounder or not. Shape offset gives you different results. You have number of trails, so how many trails it generates, and you have trail length. Okay, so if you play across, you'll see like you can control the trail length, and you have trail separation, which is number of points in the trail, and then you have the trail thickness. So like, how much it should spread. Okay, and then burst animation is like how many frames the animation should last. And then you have an option for like, outward expansion, which if it is 0, it just sort of dies out. Okay, so generally you want outward expansion, or you can also have like directional expansion, which is like it is expanding in the direction of, each trail sort of expands in its own direction. So generally you want to work with outward expansion. Okay, and then finally you have burst components, which is you have like a default value that you're adding to this. Down here it generates all the attributes that you need. So it's generating the burn and the temperature, which are the two primary that you need for doing explosions. And you can also scale it over duration, so you'll notice like it dies. As it dies out, the value goes away. Or you can also do it scale over trailing, so you'll notice that the values are lesser at the trail ends. So generally you want to turn both of them on. Okay, so it sort of, it dies out. And then lastly, in output attributes, you have, it generates an attribute called source name. I don't know what that does. And then it also generates like the velocity, and you can also add velocity noise. Okay, so we'll keep it on. You can also add noise to these attributes. Okay, so down here, you'll notice that you have an option called enable noise. And you can also offset them. So if you don't want them to start at frame 1, you can actually like, offset the burn to start at a different frame. So this is primarily, what you have. Okay, the rest remains the same. So what you can do is you can just come here and we can take a rasterize. So take a volume rasterize attribute and rasterize the burn and the temperature. And then you also want to turn on like source attribute as source name. Okay, you'll notice that it generates a better result. Now, I don't know what it does, but it generates a better result. Okay, that's pretty much it. Okay, now we can take our solver. So let's take the Pyro solver. And the first thing I'll do is I'll connect the voxel size. So we'll do like copy parameter, come in here, and the voxel size in the volume rasterize and paste relative reference. The second is close the treat Y, do a closed below. Okay, so it'll cut it off. And now if you do an explosion, you'll see like you generate like a basic explosion. Okay. A few things you want to do from the start is come into solving, and let's come into advanced, or actually no, come into simulation and just increase the memory. Okay, I'll make it around 15,000. Okay. If it's too little memory, it can't cache enough. The second thing, rest of it mostly remains the same, right? So I'm going to first come into shape. We'll lower the dissipation. I'll add some disturbance. So I'll make it around 6. I'll also add some turbulence. I'll make this around 1. Okay, and then we'll come into flames. I'll lower the flame lifespan and I'll emit smoke. I'll make it around 20. And I'll do remap flames, but we'll make it like this. I notice this, I realize like this gives a better result. Okay, so if I press play, I should start to see this. Okay, now the explosion is not looking great is because we didn't rasterize the velocity. So make sure that you rasterize the velocity as well. Okay, and that will give you, see, that gives you a better result. And then if you want, like we can come in here and you can try to sort of, you know, increase the velocity so it kind of moves out a bit more. You can try to, like, if you want a larger explosion, increase the outward expansion. That will, you know, see, give you a much larger explosion. I don't want that big an explosion, so I'm just going to, like, you know, make it smaller. And then, you know, you can just play around with the shape offset. So if I change it, you get a different result. See. So each value sort of gives you a different result, which is nice. You know, so you can sort of, you can get different, you know, details very, very quickly. What you can also do is if you feel like it's spreading out too much, take the spread angle and make it fairly low to around like 20 or 30. Then it won't spread out that much. See, now it mostly goes up. Yeah, that's better. So yeah, so I mean that's pretty much it. You know, like it's a very good node to generate, you know, explosions really quickly. If you want, we can try to increase, like let's increase the trail length and the trail thickness just for fun. That will give you an even bigger explosion. See, I don't think I want that big an explosion, so yeah, I think this is okay. And if you want it to last longer, we can try to increase the frame duration so it will last longer. But I think 5 is fine. You know, like the default values aren't bad at all. Yeah, so that's, you know, that's pretty much what the pyro burst source does. It's not too complicated. Let's do one. Let's take the disturbance to 20 just to see what we're going to get. Yeah, I think that's better. Okay, let's try to take the block size a little higher and I want to increase the roughness just to see what we're going to get. Yeah, there you go. That looks better. Okay, so this is as far as, you know, like the basic explosion is concerned. Now the next thing we want is we want to generate like trails. Okay, let's try to increase the expansion a little bit. Yeah, okay, that looks fine. Okay, so the next thing we want is we want to generate small shards sort of flying out or smaller pieces flying out. To the same, like, you know, add node, take just type in trail and you'll get 2 nodes. Actually, you'll get 3. Like if you type in pyro trail, it'll add both of these. Or you like, first one is pyro trail path and then the pyro trail path feeds into the pyro source. Okay, the pyro trail source. So if you take pyro trail, it'll just, you know, connect and add both of them. Okay, like see, this is, you automatically get this, but we'll just make it manually. So we'll just take pyro trail path. Since these are digital assets, they take a little bit of time to create. Okay, so just, you know, check it with the basic explosion and see how big it is getting. See, so this is primarily what's going to happen. So it generates like these trails going outwards. And what you can do here is you can sort of control the initial size. You can control number of trails. Okay, you have like a initial spread angle. So how wide, the trail should be. And then, so this is like the start spread angle. This is the overall spread angle. And then you have like, how much it should spread. So if you wanted to be like directional, you can control it from here. And then shape offset is the same. You get like randomization, and you have direction, which is also the same. Then you have like the velocity for the trails. Okay, like how big or small it should be. And then you have other things like you have drag. So you can like increase the drag so they fall down faster. You can increase the mass, so they're like heavier, so they go higher. And then you have gravity. You can have substeps and frames per second. You have a start frame option. Okay, so maybe we can like start it a couple of frames after the explosion. So you have like those options. You have like trail duration. So if I lower this, like if I just want it till here, so that's the trail duration that you'll get. And you can also you can do clip below height, so it'll just cut off at that point. But if your ground plane is there, you don't need to worry about this. Like it's going to hit the ground anyways. Okay, you also have an option to enable static collision, but we'll do that later. Okay, and then the rest is the same. You have like an option to output some attributes. Okay, but this is not the main thing that generates it. Type in trail again, and you'll get something called pyro trail source. So when you connect this to pyro trail source, it will generate these guys. And here this is the same, like you're generating trail components, you're generating density by default. But what we want is let's get rid of density. We want burn and temperature, and you have like default value what you want. And so now you have things like you can do scale over duration, so which is nice. And you can also do scale over trailing. Okay, and you can also scale using age. So it is sort of, like as it dies out, it becomes smaller. Okay, let's lower the, the age of it. So we'll come into trail generation and we'll lower the trail duration to like 40 or 50. So you'll see it die out like that. Yeah, in the trail components, I turned off the temperature. So make sure you turn on the temperature. You can add noise to both of them if you want. Usually it's a good idea to add noise, so you get like variation. And again, like you can offset it by a couple of frames if you don't want it to start immediately. You have an option for increasing the speed. And then you have like basic stuff like you can increase the trail length, and you can also add noise to the trail. You can define radius and particle separation. So all of this stuff is the same. So if I feed this into the volume rasterize, what you'll get is this. See. Now the one thing you want to do is, which I couldn't find actually, so I sort of did it in another way, is if they're too big, you might want to reduce like the particle scale. Like one thing you can do is you can come into filter and set it to point. So then these will be smaller. And what you can also try to do is we can take a float, attributed just float, which will generate like a p-scale, and we'll do a multiply, okay, and I'll keep it like fairly low. So this will also make it, make the trails smaller. You can also try to lower the maximum filter size. See. Like lower the trail length, you don't really need it that long. And we can try to lower the radius. And yeah, there you go. What you can also try to do is we come into the pyro trail, and you have options for varying all of this, right? So like over here, you can see like it says set uniform, set varying, so you have like options for those. So what we can do is we can come into the pyro trail path and the start frame, and I can say offset per point by around, like 7 or 8 frames. So you'll see like each one is different. Okay. So if we come into our Pyro solver, we'll get, each one starts off at a slightly different frame, which is good. Like it gives you a little bit of variation. And now if we combine these together, so we'll just do a merge. So I'll merge this and that, and they both come in here. So if you press play, you'll notice, see, there you go. Let's do one thing. Let's have them drop a little faster. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to lower the velocity scale. Yeah. So what this will do is they won't rise very high. Yeah, okay. And yeah, so that's pretty cool. And we can try to like expand it a bit more. And let's also try to spread it out a bit. Yeah, I think it's spread out too much, and it sort of ate up the trails. It is not bad. It looks good. Yeah, so you get like, the two things that we wanted. We can try to increase the lifespan of this again, so that it hits the ground. So what we can do is trail duration, just increase it so that, it travels long enough that it is going to eventually, fall down and hit the ground. So when it hits the ground, it'll generate like a little nice, puff of smoke over there. See, like if you keep this to, if you keep the volume rasterized to Gaussian, sometimes they turn out to be too big, which is not bad. But in our case, like the trails might end up being too big. But the point is, when you increase the voxel resolution, then they become smaller again. Right now our voxel resolution is too low. Yeah. So, but right now I'll just keep it to point. I think I prefer that. Okay. Just as one try, this is shape offset is 49, right? Like let's try to change it. Okay, not bad. Okay, so this is, the two things that we want. So the last thing I want to do is I want to create a shock wave. Okay. So the thing is like, how do you go about creating a shock wave? Let's just try one last thing. Let's come into source. I want to lower the spread angle and let's try to increase the velocity. Let's try this again. Okay, where are they? I think I lost them. Yeah, they got eaten up. Yeah, you have to sort of like, yeah, it showed up towards the end. Yeah, this is, no, I think I should keep it low. Like lower the velocity scale. Yeah, there you go. That looks better. Okay, so this is as far as, like the basic explosion and the trails are concerned. So now let's set up the shock wave, okay, which is mostly just a trick. Okay, like I looked at this node and I went like, hey, maybe we can use this to create a shock wave. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate like these three things. I really don't know if the attribute adjust float is even doing anything. Let me do one thing. Let me just try to turn it off. Maybe I don't need it. Like sometimes you add a bunch of nodes and then you don't know if something is actually working or not working. No, it's pretty much the same. Yeah, don't add that. Don't add the attribute adjust float. It's not needed. So how do you go about creating a shock wave? Right. So what you want to do is take this, and the first thing you want is come into the trail generation and get rid of gravity. So it'll be straight like that. And then take the start spread angle, like make the spread angle 0, and then take this start spread angle and make it 90. So it's just flat on the ground like that. And so you'll get like, points going out this way. And then you can basically just take the number of trails and make it around 1,000. So you'll get like this whole thing spreading out. And if I get rid of this temporarily and I connect this instead, if I press play, you should get to see a shockwave. See, there you go. Okay, maybe like you want to do a couple of things, right? Like first of all, just like get rid of the P scale. The second thing is maybe they're moving too fast. Yeah, they're probably moving too fast. Okay, so let's come in here and we lower the velocity. And what you also want to do is come into the trail shape, like we lower the particle separation, increase the radius, we'll increase the length a little bit. So we'll get this. Yeah, okay. But what I also want to do is I think we had like a variation in the trail generation. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, we'll turn off offset per point. So yeah, see, so it's sort of like uniform. Or we'll keep offset per point to just around 2 frames. Yeah. And okay, let's test this, see what we're getting. Then we'll make more changes. Yeah, there you go. See, that's better. See, so you get like a nice little shock wave on the ground. This always sort of bothered me. Like, how do I go about creating a shock wave? But yeah, with the pyro trail, it's like, I mean, you can. There are different ways to do it. But this looks nice. And let's also do one thing. I'm going to lower the lifespan overall. It just gets a little confusing because the values are like everywhere. So it gets a little like, you kind of wonder where everything is. Yeah, there is an option in here to sort of prevent like the stepping from happening. Like if you come into the pyro trail source and trail components, if you come absolute down, there's something here called correct length stepping. So it tries to sort of, I think it tries to correct, the gaps in the middle. Yeah, there you go. So you don't get like too many of those gaps in the middle. Okay, now another thing you can do with this is if you want to sort of break it up a little, if you come in here to trail animation or trail shape, I need to figure out which one. Sorry, wrong node. The pyro trail path. Yeah, you'll have these two things. You'll have enable direction noise. So if you turn that on, it sort of spreads it out like that, which is not what we want. Maybe a little bit. Okay. And then you also have enable length noise, which sort of, like if you increase it, see, it sort of breaks it up like that. Okay. So mostly you want it circular, but just like, a little bit broken up. So you combine these things and you should get a better looking. And if you feel like this is lesser, just increase the number of points. So come into the pyro trail path, come to source and make this around 2000. And now we can combine all three to get our final result. I won't do the pyro bake because you know how to use the pyro bake, so there's no point doing it again. But there we go. So now if we press play, we should hopefully get all three, the explosion and the trails. See, so there are the trails and the shock wave on the ground. Yeah, so let's just simulate and so we can come back and play it. So there you go. That's your basic explosion. The rest you can do, like if you wanted to rise higher, we can try to add some temperature to this. So I can come in here to flames and we can try to add like more temperature to this. So let's say if we keep the temperature to around 2 and that will make the explosion rise up, higher. We can also try to add the temperature here, like at the source level itself. Like I can come in here and take the burst component and I can try to increase the temperature at this point. See, so that will make the explosion sort of, rise up higher. Yeah, so this is not the greatest looking explosion, but it should give you enough, like, how to create all the various sort of details that you need, and how you can sort of, combine everything and make a better looking explosion. You can also add a little bit of expansion in here as a final thing. I don't think I added expansion. Like, let's get rid of this. We'll add expansion. Let's make it around 2. See what we get. Too much expansion can sort of, like the explosion can go really out of control. So I don't usually do that. Yeah, we can probably try to lower the dissipation further. Okay, let's keep it to 0.15. So the smoke sort of stays around longer. Okay, let's stop here. And we'll add like a pyrobake to this. But there you go. Yeah, that's a nice looking explosion overall. I think that's like a shadow problem. Like it's because there's like viewport shadows going on, you're getting like this banding going through it. Okay, let's try to add like a bake. Pyrobake volume. Okay, let's add that. And we'll come into fire. Ooh, that looks nice. We can try to mask it. Or actually do one thing. What it does is it sets both the things to temperature. Change the color volume to flame. Yeah, there you go. That looks better. Ooh, that does look nice. And you can try to increase like the density of the smoke. But yeah, there you go. That's it. That's how to create an explosion using the new nodes. Yeah, so the next lesson we'll take a look at how to create multiple explosions, because those are options that are inbuilt into the pyro burst source and the trail as well. So it just makes life a little easier. This is something I forget to add in every one of my videos, but if you're interested, you can support me on Patreon. Currently, the Particles in Houdini course, the Little Big UI training, and the new sort of patterns and textures training are all available on Patreon. So if you're interested in those, you can sign up over there, or you can look at my website. That's pretty much it.